Hey, folks, I'm glad that you joined us. This is Phantoms and Monsters Radio, where the veil lifts one story at a time. Now, if you're new here, welcome to the presentation. Now, tonight, shapeshifters have haunted human imagination for centuries. Beings who wear more than one face, who walk as men by day and monsters by night. From the deserts of the Southwest to the waters of the Caribbean, from the backroads of California to the outback of Australia. Witnesses tell us that these entities are not confined to folklore. They are real and they are watching. So tonight on Phantoms of Monsters Radio, we dive into chilling encounters that blur the line between man and beast, spirit and flesh. Skinwalkers, evil mermaids, spectral bird creatures, ghostly children, and reptilian masqueraders. Are they demons, interdimensional beings, or echoes of something even older? Stay with us, and because each story you'll hear is stranger than the last, and you may leave you questioning the shape of reality itself. So let's begin. In this first account, in the heart of Taos, New Mexico, a part Apache security guard learned that legends walk under the desert moon. What started as a quiet night watch turned into a confrontation with a skinwalker that would haunt him for life. Now, in native lore across the Southwest, skinwalkers are feared sorcerers who take shape of animals by night using dark power to stalk and torment the living. One man, J.G. Butlin, carried Apache blood in his veins in the summer of 1993 while working as a security guard in Taos, New Mexico. He found himself face to face with something he'll never forget. It was a warm June night around 2 in the morning. Butlin had parked his 1978 Thunderbird beneath a tree on a hotel property. He must have drifted into a light doze, because the next thing he knew, the entire car rocked violently as if something massive had struck the undercarriage. Startled awake, he threw the car into gear and pulled forward, only to find himself staring into the eyes of a creature that defied description. It was dog-like, but wrong. Its fur was mangy, black, and tan. Its body was powerfully muscular. and muscled. Its nose was too human to be canine, and its eyes looked like a man's, but filled with darkness so deep it felt it was trying to invade his very soul. Now, Buckland's instincts screamed danger. He floored the gas, aiming straight for it. The creature bolted, darting across the road into native land, then back again, leading him into another lot and finally into an area locals called the ponds, choked with high weeds and hidden cesspools. Buckland grabbed his pistol and gave chase on foot. In the brush, he could hear it circling, trying to flank him. Then suddenly it rushed. The force of the blow threw him aside as if he had weighed nothing. When he staggered back, pistol in hand, what had entered the weeds on four legs now emerged on two. A pale, naked, man-like creature or figure lurched away, its body shuddering as it screamed. And that scream, half human and half beast, was unlike anything he had ever heard. The figure vanished into the sagebrush toward a nearby home, and Buckland held his fire. He returned to the hotel shaken and sleepless. Now, the next morning, he told the housekeeping staff what had happened. Some of the women from Taos Pueblo only nodded. Oh, yes, they said, you saw a skinwalker. The years that followed were not kind. Buckland's health faltered. His luck soured. He believed a skinwalker had left a mark on him, and so he sought cleansing from a shaman named Tall Eagle Boy, who saged, rattled, and prayed over him in the old way. In time, a spirit ally came to him in the form of a great white wolf. In Apache tradition, the wolf is a guardian, brave, loyal, protector of its family. Buckland believed his spirit animal helped break the skinwalker's grip. Still, he never forgot the odds of that thing, or the way it shifted from beast to man from fleeing into the desert night. And he carried one hard-earned lesson from that encounter. When faced with such beings, the safest choice is not to engage, because some things just don't just threaten your life, they threaten your spirit. Now, this next account, a tragedy at sea led to an encounter more terrifying than the waves themselves. When divers tried to recover drowned children, something screamed from the depths, a colorful human-faced creature that snatched the dead and vanished. Now, the witness tells me the strange underworld and possibly evil mermaids are very much real. Having witnessed them once in my life, I can definitely testify to their existence, but they're not the pretty women that you often see portrayed. I live here in the Caribbean on the islands of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Back on January 12th, 2015, a vehicle carrying school children had lost control while going down a steep hill and plunged into the sea. 8 children died, 6 of whom had recovered. When we, the villagers, got to the scene, the bodies of the young people were floating on the water. We put on our diving gear and jumped in to recover the bodies. 2 other men and I were trying to grab the body of one of the girls who was my cousin. When one of the men got close enough to make a grab, an entity appeared out of nowhere, screaming angrily, yes, screaming, and snarling, saying, "Don't touch her, or else you'll see what will happen." This thing was pure evil. Its face looked human. It had a Nigerian accent, and its body was colorful. We were terrified. The creature immediately grabbed the girl's body and took off at incredible speed, then just disappeared. There were about 15 divers in the water. When we got to the shore, we couldn't speak for over 2 hours, scared beyond imagination. When we told the others what happened, some of the other divers said that they saw the same thing. The elders in the community began sharing stories about these creatures from long ago, before electricity came to our village. They said the young people were a sacrifice. From that day on, I had never looked at the ocean the same way again. I wish we had evidence to prove what we saw, but waterproof phones and cameras were not standard in our area back in 2015. To this day, the other divers still talk about it. I have stopped diving since the incident. We've been called all kinds of names, but I know what I saw and what I heard that creature say. Since then, I've been researching shapeshifters and related topics on the internet, and a lot of information has led me to Africa. I've also developed an interest in Nigerian movies that depict these themes. I understand the frustration of not having the evidence to support our claims. Now, until now, we haven't found those two girls' bodies. The Coast Guard searched for almost a month, and we searched the rocky beaches for miles over several weeks. About a year ago, a couple of friends and I went night fishing. When we got to the beach in our area, we heard a sound that was almost like someone or something wailing in the water just off the shore. It frightened us. For nearly a minute or two, we stood there unable to move or say anything. Our seas are rocky and shallow. When I got home, I was scrolling through Facebook and saw a video that someone posted of a fishing vessel experiencing the same sound. He was then visited by the CIA or someone related to that video. So I don't know exactly what happened. That's how it ended. I didn't get a follow up on it, but I doubt that it was CIA. But who knows? You never know what it is. I want to thank Mortal Clown for their donation. Much appreciated. Now, the next account. Sometimes the night itself seems to breathe, and in the silence, something stirs. A couple walking their dogs in rural California discovered that silence can herald the beating wings of an impossible predator. The witness states, my husband and I own two dogs and take them for a walk for an hour every evening after work. We live in a rural area in Duluth, California, which can feel a bit eerie at night, especially when there's no moonlight, leaving it pitch dark. Now, this incident occurred before daylight saving time changed. My husband and I were on our usual nightly walk on a particular night deep in the rural part of the trail, about 2 miles from any homes. Suddenly, we felt an unsettling sensation. Nature went silent. The frogs stopped croaking, and the usual noises from bugs ceased altogether, plunging us into an eerie quiet. I remarked, that's strange. There must be a predator nearby. Just seconds after I said that, we heard the sounds of enormous wings flapping, as if something was about to land. We felt the wind generated by this massive creature, and then we listened to a large sycamore tree branch crack under its weight. I can't even describe the power of those wings. It was a calm, still night with no wind, yet the force from the wings was strong enough to blow my long hair around. We both sensed a presence that felt evil and menacing. So we started running, and neither of us dared to look back. At that moment, we saw something flying away overhead. It didn't appear to be a large bird. Its wings flapped unnaturally as it lurched upwards. My husband is a true skeptic, but even he couldn't rationalize or explain what he had just witnessed. He even shared the experience with his coworkers and friends. Since then, he has outright refused to walk in that area. This isn't the first time I've seen something unusual in that region. Last summer, I spotted a shadow figure that was darker than black, resembling a large cat-human hybrid. It emerged from the creek and climbed up a massive tree before disappearing. It appeared to have wings. After that, we experienced a series of 3 really unsettling events. Perhaps it's a story for another time, but my point is that something strange is happening in that area. Any thoughts on what it could have been? The week it happened, I had been telling my husband a shapeshifter, so I wonder if it was unwittingly attracted. I unwittingly attracted something. I have abilities and have always been susceptible to experiences like this, but this one honestly freaked us out. I guess it could have been an attraction. I don't know, but that was a pretty creepy story. On this next account, on a lonely country road, a young minister saw a vision that defied reason. From ghostly figures to a gray-skinned child peering from a drainage pipe, the encounter tied back to whispers of black magic and tribal history. Now, the witness tells me this is a true story that happened to me many years ago when I was in the ministry. I had taken my grandfather out for an evening sporting event. We lived in the countryside of southern Colorado, and drove him back home around 11:30 or 12 o'clock midnight after the event ended. Now, as I was coming down a country road, I noticed something stirring the horses in the field. Since those were our horses, I decided to park my car just past the bend on the road. I walked back to the bend and looked over the barbed wire fence to see what was disturbing the horses. Now, as I was scanning the area, I heard a rustling in the leaves and grass just a few feet in front of me. The sound of grass moving and leaves crackling. That's when things started to get strange. Win Nice, thank you for your donation. Much appreciated. Now, as I looked into the weeds and grass, I saw what appeared to be a vision of a man and a woman lying there. I thought to myself, this is silly. I've stumbled onto a couple wanting privacy in the middle of the night. I couldn't really comprehend what had happened. When I looked again, the two figures seemed to shrink in size, transforming into something black, white, and furry, and it darted right past me. As it came closer, I noticed a water pipe that ran from the ditches under the dirt road into the drainage area. Now, confused, I turned my attention to the end of the pipe, and to my astonishment, two little hands emerged and grasped the edge of it. Then a little boy's face appeared from the pipe. His face was a ghastly grayish white, and he had black fur where his hair should have been. He looked straight at me, and I looked back at him in shock, and then he quickly retreated into the pipe. I felt scared and bewildered after experiencing something so startling. Now, initially, I thought I had walked into something strange, and then everything shrank away from me. I didn't know what it was I had seen, and after seeing that little face emerge and disappear, I hurried back to my car, started it up, and then I paused and thought, wait a minute, you're a divinity student, you're a minister, nothing can harm you. So I turned off the car, went back to the bend, knelt, and began to pray. After saying a few prayers, I got back up, returned to my car, and drove away. Now, the next day, I told my grandfather about what had happened. He replied that he didn't want to share his own thoughts. Instead, he wanted me to tell my father the same story to see what he would say. I went home and relayed the incident to my father. He then told me that many years ago, he and my grandfather had lived at that farmhouse. There used to be a small one-bedroom house right at the bend. That same bend is where I had seen the vision, and the woman there had lost her child. They heard that she had turned to black magic in an attempt to connect with her deceased child. One time, while she was performing a ritual, my father and grandfather saw a fireball emerge from the house. It rolled across the yard and the gravel area before jumping over the fence and moving toward the field right about where the horses were. I know it sounds like a fantastic story, but it's true. I believe what I saw emerging from that pipe was the ghost of that little boy. Now, I do wonder if there was an overall connection between the woman conjuring spells and black magic. You know, this area is once part of the southern Ute people's range before the Spanish disturbed things. There may be some custom information, the history of the tribal bands that may tie into legends, but I did look and I really didn't find anything. So if you're enjoying tonight's presentation, I want to hear more stories and want to hear more stories like this. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. It really helps us reach more people who are searching for answers about the unexplained. And make sure to click the notification bell so you don't miss any of our live shows or new episodes when they drop. So this next account, what looked like a flying creature became something stranger in the trees. A ghost hunter's brush with a being that shifted from mid-flight left her afraid of the outdoors long after that night was over. So the witness states, in August 2008, I was with a group of people in central Arkansas out in the countryside just before dusk. This area has one-lane bridges and gravel roads with no road name signs. Many years ago, it was an Amish community, and one of the people in the group had lived there as a child. We had returned to the area to go ghost hunting at a cemetery near her old home. None of us is a drinker or drug user, and we are all middle aged. Although we belonged to the local ghost hunters club, we were on our own that night. Now, we arrived well before dusk to familiarize ourselves with the surroundings. I stepped out of the car and walked about 6 feet when I suddenly heard the sound of something quickly approaching me. It resembled wings flapping, but it was unlike anything I'd ever heard before, much larger in scale. I promptly turned around and saw this creature headed straight for me. I was so scared that I could hardly comprehend what I was seeing. I screamed and dropped to the ground. The entity flew over my head and landed on a tree limb nearby. When I looked up, it was staring down at me. Just then, my friends called my name and ran over to me. When I turned my gaze back to the tree, I didn't see it anymore, but my friends had witnessed it flying towards me, even though they didn't see it in the trees. Now, while in the tree, the creature didn't look the same as it had while flying toward me. It appeared more like a large worm or snake, but much larger. It seemed as if it had wrapped itself around the tree limb, something a bird definitely cannot do. I did look to see if there were any other people of similar sight, any other reports of similar sightings in the area, but found no documentation. Now I'm afraid to go outside before dusk for fear of encountering another one. I've never been fearful of ghost hunting until now. What I saw was the most amazing and terrifying thing I'd ever experienced. I pray I never see it again. Do you have any idea what this creature might have been? A shapeshifter, a thunderbird, or perhaps a demon? I genuinely have no idea. And I don't either. It was some type of shape-shifting entity of some type. But as you can hear with these reports, there's a lot of different things out there. So this next account, a morning walk turned into a nightmare when a figure in black shadowed a couple, when a figure in black shadowed a couple at a fixed distance. Its shape shifted with every glance until it simply vanished on an open road. Now, the witness tells me my husband and I went on our first walk this morning after moving to the country in West Texas. It's not the kind of country where your nearest neighbor is miles away, but trees and empty fields surround us. As we got about 35 feet away from the road near our house, we noticed a humanoid figure standing on the road simply watching us. It appeared to be someone dressed entirely in black, staring at us from the left side of the road. As we walked closer, we realized it was turning away from us. No matter how fast or slow we walked, it maintained the same distance from us. When we stopped moving, so did the figure. What seemed to change was its shape. As we approached, we saw it hobbling like a drunk person. If we looked away, it would move to the opposite side of the road and assume a completely different shape, resembling a dog or a small animal. When we got closer, the creature was further ahead by a hill. It began to change shape again, developing stick-like legs. It walked, but it didn't bend at its knees, almost as if it were on stilts. We slowed our pace and it started to walk over the hill, still shifting its form. When we reached the hill, we looked ahead to see what shape the creature had taken, but it had vanished. There was no trace of it in the distance, and we could see for miles, and no sign that it had been there at all. In this next account, what began with a silent flight of a white owl ended with a towering, ghostly humanoid. Along abandoned train tracks in the state of Washington, 3 friends learned that sometimes an owl is not an owl at all. So the witness states, about 10 years ago, on a fall evening around 7:30 p.m., my girlfriend, my roommate, and I were walking along some decommissioned train tracks in Washington state, surrounded by woods on both sides. We loved exploring little hidden areas, so this wasn't an uncommon event for us. We were about 5 miles into the tracks and woods when we began considering heading back. as it was getting dark quickly and none of us had a flashlight. Suddenly, I was overcome by a sensation of deep nausea inducing dread. I glanced at both my friends and saw that they were also feeling it. Their eyes were wide as they looked around. "Let's start heading back," I declared, and they nodded in silent agreement. Up until that moment, we had been perfectly fine, and this sudden onset of fears was unusual and unsettling. Just as we turned around, we all heard a strange sound that resembled a mix of quiet thunder and metal clashing. It seemed to be coming from off in the distance. We whipped around to see what had made the noise and saw a large white bird, which I thought was a white owl, fly silently over our heads, flapping its wings before disappearing behind a tree about 25 foot away. We exchanged bewildered glances, trying to make sense of what we had just experienced, and quickly began walking briskly back towards civilization. Suddenly, we heard what sounded like twig snapping in the woods behind us. My girlfriend and I turned around to see what caused the noise. Peeking from behind the tree where the owl had just flown, we spotted an impossibly tall, ghostly white humanoid figure. It had one hand resting on the trunk of the tree as it leaned out to peer at us. Before we could catch a good look at its face, it quickly retreated behind the tree and disappeared from view. Panic set in as my girlfriend and I exchanged terrified looks. She opened her mouth to say something, but I interrupted her by saying, "Don't talk about it. We need to walk faster." My roommate looked at us, confused and clearly frightened by my abrupt statement. I insisted that we should probably run home at that point, which we did. I've shared this story with a few people, but no one believes me. What I saw was not the owl I had seen earlier. This being had a clearly ghostly white hand on the tree trunk, a neck, and an upper body, and it was tall. I would estimate it was at least 7 foot high, though not tall enough to reach the branches of the tree. I wish I could have made out its face. The only reason I saw it was all due to the eerie whiteness against the dark backdrop of the woods. So, in this next account, 4 girls on a midnight walk meet a figure on the path. A man in black who dissolved into haze, shrank into a strange animal, and then disappeared. Was it a yali? Was it a hairy man or something more elusive? Good day. I'm an Indigenous Australian woman, 38 years old. Due to colonization, I'm not what one might consider a full blood, but I still identify as Indigenous. Growing up, I heard stories about yalis and hairy men. Now, yalis are small, meerkat like creatures, while hairy men are similar to what many describe as a Sasquatch. Now, when I was 17 years old, my cousins and I would spend holidays with our family in a town that had a large indigenous population. We were there mainly for the boys. One particular summer night, we decided to walk into town. Our family lived about 2 to 3 kilometers out of town, but the highway was well lit and a paved path that ran alongside a cleared field. The grass was unkept, somewhere between freshly mowed and overgrown. We began our trek home around midnight. There were 4 of us girls, with 2 in front and 2 behind. After walking about 100 meters out of town, my cousin in the front noticed what looked like a large man wearing a long black coat and hat walking towards us about 150 meters ahead. The path was straight and lined with streetlights, and we hadn't been drinking or smoking anything. We paused and wondered aloud, "Who's that?" As we debated whether or not to continue, I kept my eyes fixed on this person. The discussion stopped once we noticed that the figure had suddenly turned into a kind of haze or fog. It resembled someone who had been blurred out of a photograph. Everything around it was crystal clear, but the figure itself was out of focus. Moments later, what was once a man transformed into a small creature that I guessed to be the size of a meerkat or a large rabbit standing on its hind legs. It looked directly in our direction, and after about 5 to 10 seconds, it hazed over again and completely vanished. We all witnessed it, and we still talk about it that night to this day. I'm reasonably confident that it was a yowie or a little hairy man. There are various theories within the indigenous community about these creatures. Some believe they live under riverbeds, while others think they dwell inside cattle. Some people even say that they lure young children into the bush. It's worth noting that I tend to be a bit pessimistic. Until that night, I had never experienced anything like this before. This next account. For weeks, a man and his dog saw a mysterious figure, an Asian man walking late at night. But one night, that familiar stranger revealed in a reptilian face, scales glinting in the dark, and then walked on as though nothing had happened. So the witness tells me, I live in Colusa, California. My dog and I used to sit on the doorstep at night and watch a gigantic white owl that would make a clicking sound like clock, 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 clock. It often roosted in the giant oak tree across the street. So one night, about 3 a.m., I saw an Asian man walking up the sidewalk, smoking a cigarette in European style, holding it under his hand with one arm behind his back. Now, as he passed me, he nodded to me and I nodded back. I thought it was strange to see someone out so late. He walked around the corner and then disappeared. A week later, my dog and I saw the same Asian man again, this time a block and a half to the east, smoking his cigarette in the same peculiar manner. When he walked by, he smiled softly, said hello, and bowed his head. I returned the greeting with a hello and bowed my own head. The sound of his hard soled shoes would clatter in the stillness of the night in this small rural farming town where virtually no one else was around. About a week after that, I left the double front doors of my studio apartment open for ventilation so I could listen to the crickets and bullfrogs. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard the Asian man approaching my door. He stopped, turned, and looked in at me lying on my mattress on the floor. It was the same Asian man, but this time he wore a hooded jacket and had a reptilian face. We stared at each other for about 10 seconds. I examined his face and noticed that he had eye sockets but no eyes. He had a pronounced brow ridge and a small slit for a mouth. His skin looked scaly, resembling that of a snake, with a bluish black color. After a moment, he turned and continued walking, but this time he wasn't smoking a cigarette. However, the clattering of his shoes faded away as he moved into the distance, and that was the last time I had seen him. So, folks, that was the last account. If you have any questions, any statements, anything you want to express, please use all caps in the chat. Anybody got any questions or anything? Got a decent crowd in here tonight. Dagnammit. Any thoughts on how a shapeshifter physically transforms one's form through an inherently magical ability at will? Well, that's why we call it the supernatural. We don't really have any scientific explanation as to why these things happen. I mean, I've encountered shapeshifters myself. I've heard accounts for over 40 years. I still don't understand it. But I do know from what people tell me and what people describe it that there's a supernatural aspect to all these beings. Are they all connected? I have no idea. Do they come from the same place onto our earth plane? Hard to tell. That's the best I can tell you. Anything else, folks? Okay. Dagnammit asked again, can monsters shapeshift to look like specific humans in order to trick their victims? I do recall a few accounts where that has actually happened, where people swear that they seen something or someone shapeshift into someone they know. Many times it's similar to doppelganger sightings. I've heard it from all sides. So, yeah, I mean, I guess they do have the ability to move in and out as they wish or to take the form they wish. Dude, where's my UFO? Any thoughts on portals? Well, I personally believe they exist. I've always thought that there was some type of gateway abilities through some beings to go from other dimensions into our Earth plane. I was more convinced after I started investigating the Mothman, Chicago Mothman sightings or the winged humanoids, because so many people had mentioned about seeing these things suddenly appear like out of an invisible doorway and vice versa, just either manifesting or vanishing. Um, I think it does. I think there is something to it. Maybe one day we'll find out. Hopefully, I would really like to know. Sir Wolf, hi Lon. How long has the pale crawler been in folklore? I guess there have been versions for many, many years. The sightings of the pale crawlers that we get nowadays, I'd say about 15 to 20 years. But of course, it's become more prevalent in the past 5 to 6 years, and people continue to see them. Now, I don't know if it's become more mainstream and people are less afraid to contact someone or not afraid to be ridiculed as much as before. But they're very creepy sightings, and whatever these things are, and of course, there's something else we don't know. I wrote a book about it. I have no idea what it is. So, is it connected to other entities, other cryptids? No one really knows. Have most this is from Dude's Word My UFO. Have most Mothman sightings mentioned it having red eyes? I'd say the majority. We occasionally have some that don't, but the majority do have the red eyes. And we had accounts of other colors of the eyes as well. Al Alex Alexis Chaston, have you ever done any shows on premonitions? Yeah, I have. Yeah, I have. And maybe it's time to do another one. I had to see what I have available. Marla Snyder, do you think not deer may be shapeshifters? Um, I guess it's possible. I think most of the witness sightings that I've received are haven't involved any type of shape shifting. But yeah, it's entirely possible, I assume. Leakum the Spicy Lizard. What's the oddest place or situation you heard a shapeshifter be found? Any high ranking societal occupations ever mentioned? Hmm. I had to think about that. Most shapeshifting that I hear about is of a human-like being transforming into an animal species, though the animal species is much different than something that's indigenous. As far as an occupation, occasionally, I guess a lot. I'd say most of the sightings are realized by people who work at night or doing security work that stumble upon something like that. Um, Many times when people have UFO encounters or see something coming out of a craft, that at some point sometimes they do change into another form. Uh, Dude, where's my UFO? Do you think it's an interesting similarity to how the Varginha, Brazil alien also had red eyes? I know it did. I know the witnesses stated it had red eyes. I don't know if there's any real connection. I guess it could be, but maybe that's something inherent to beings that live beyond our dimension. I've heard of red eyes in a lot of instances, and but yeah, it's a humanoid as well, or humanoid type being, and having the red eyes. Sure, it could very well. It could be a relationship between, say, a Mothman or an unwinged being or some type of ultra terrestrial or alien or extraterrestrial. Mortal Clown, thank you again for your donations. Very much appreciated. Um, Jay, have there been any or many stories about shifters being in the position of power and taunting those who sense them? I think that's a meme or a theme coming from TV shows or movies for the most part. I I guess it has happened. I offhand I can't think of one that takes that scenario, but yeah, I mean it's kind of a trope that you see a lot of in pop culture and to films. And of course, we have talked before about the relationship between what people see and recognize and what they, how they describe certain situations they get into and relate to something they know about or something they have seen on TV or television or in the movies. Anything else, folks? Okay, I guess that's it. So, if you had an encounter or sighting, email me at lonstrickler@phantomsandmonsters.com with the date, location, and your detailed observation or experience. But tonight, please like and subscribe and share this with anyone who drives the lonely roads or watches the sky. So, again, the newsletter sign up is found on phantomsandmonsters.com on the upper part of the homepage. You can sign up, put your email address in there, and receive the newsletter. It went live last weekend. So, in 2 weeks, we'll have another one. So, until we meet again, stay safe, stay curious, and keep looking up. Good night and have a great weekend.